So welcome. My name is Topher Lyons, and I'm a solutions engineer here at Sprocket Security. This talk, obviously a little tongue-in-cheek, is called "Oh Great, Another AI Talk." But I'm not here to tell you like how AI is going to replace your security team or your jobs, or that it's all hype. Really, the kind of context and core of this talk is how attackers are using AI right now, specific techniques, what the output looks like, and what you should be concerned about. The whole talk is maybe about 25 to 30 minutes, so let's get started. So I'm covering 5 sections today. I'm going to start with context. We're going to talk a little bit about the recent OpenAI incident. Then I'm going to cover 3 different ways attackers are using AI. Obviously, you can use AI for many, many things, but I wanted to keep this concise and clear. So 3 things we're going to look at is OSINT at scale, spear phishing at scale, and exploit scaffolding. And then I'll close with some takeaways and things that you can do to prepare yourself. So let's start with context. On July or in mid-July of this year, I'm sure many of you know, OpenAI announced that one of their models, Soul, as well as an unreleased model, escaped their sandbox and hacked Hugging Face. Not because someone told it to per se, it was running an internal test. The model decided that the fastest path to completing the test was to get outside of its sandbox. So it found a 0 day in its own internal proxy, used that to escalate privileges, moved laterally through OpenAI's research environment, and eventually achieved remote code execution on Hugging Face's production servers. So 4 steps with no human direction. One thing that I do like to call out is that going back to speaking about not being hype or saying that this is all hype, is people keep saying that nobody asked or told the agent to do this, but indirectly, I don't necessarily think that's true, right? Like we told the agent to solve this problem using whatever means necessary and removed its guardrails, and then it proceeded to do that. So indirectly, it did actually do what it was told to do. It's just, I think the kind of the key takeaway from this is that there wasn't a human supervising or watching it. Um, that's just the crazy part. I'm opening up with this because I want to set the frame for everything else that follows, that it's not hypothetical, it's not a thought experiment about AI. This just happened, and the capability it demonstrated is the same capability that makes attackers much more dangerous now. Also of note, this incident triggered investigations at several AI organizations that discovered similar events happening, including 2 at Anthropic. But that news is so recent that I haven't been able to update my slides for that information. So I want to be precise about what's changed and what hasn't, because there's a lot of noise in both directions. Attackers still need domain knowledge to act on what they find. Access still has to be granted. You can't just go and prompt your favorite AI model, give me the credentials for Amazon. A hardened security program, hardened and mature programs are still difficult to compromise. There's a lot of data around that. And human judgment still drives what's next, right? Humans still are kind of the keepers of the goal. They understand like what they're trying to achieve with the hack. It's like what's the end state here, that sort of thing. What has changed though is the economics. The floor dropped. You don't need expertise. You don't need a lot of resources to run a sophisticated attack. You don't need to spend hours on manual OSINT. One attacker can run campaigns against 50 targets. Personalized, contextually aware phishing now costs roughly 4 cents to generate, as something that I discovered when doing research for this. And as of last month, the autonomy piece changed, right? The incident I just described didn't require a sophisticated adversary directing every step. So that's the frame of the talk. Not panic, not hype, a genuine shift in the economics and speed of the attack. So 3 ways, concrete use cases that we're going to go into. Again, OSINT automation, this is something that I used to do a lot. Not automate OSINT, but OSINT in general. Back when I was on some red teams, I would scrape public sources, I would build dossiers, I would do a lot of analysis and build org charts. But what's scary now is that you can feed all of these sources into an LLM and get a structured dossier in like less than 10 minutes. Spear phishing, obviously not a new concept. That's been around for quite a long time now. Spear phishing and whaling. But the big deal here is that context-aware lures reference real infrastructure, real teams, real events, all these things that you used to have to build those dossiers for, but they're generated at scale and almost at no cost. So they can target several different individuals at the same time and have real data, as well as all be individual and unique, so there's no signatures. And we'll talk about that more. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is exploit scaffolding. So one of the other fun things about being a hacker is being able to write new exploits from recently released vulnerabilities. And sometimes these are very complicated, literally take months, even maybe years, to write a proof of concept for an exploit. But now you can generate a proof of concept for an exploit, adapt it to a specific target, and rewrite payloads faster than it's ever been. So obviously, I'm going to dive into that a little more as well. So let's start with OSINT. So old way versus new way. So OSINT also been around for a really long time. Information is public. What has changed is the time. As I mentioned before, I used to manually scrape. Well, I'm a little bit older than I look on camera. So back in my day, it was MySpace. But these days, manually searching LinkedIn, job postings, GitHub. And putting all that information together line by line, using passive internet scanners and open source resources like Shodan, building that target profile or that dossier by hand, and then doing this one target at a time, needing a skilled analyst to do that and put all these pieces together. And that literally used to take maybe like 6 to 8 hours, like a full day for a single person, especially if you're building these really like detailed, tailored dossiers. But now you're running a pipeline. You can give the LLM or the AI all the information that it needs to scrape and aggregate the data across all those sources simultaneously. And maybe within about 20 minutes, you can get those dossiers on 50 targets. Additionally, and the big takeaway is there's no special expertise or analyst that's required. The LLM in this case isn't finding things that a human couldn't, it's just doing it faster, running at scale. So here's an example of what a pipeline might actually look like. So I want to tell my AI to do a job posting scrape. Of note, I expect maybe a little bit more technical audience, and if you've probably heard this before, but I do want to highlight for those that perhaps haven't heard it before, that job postings are very, very rich information for threat actors and for red teamers and good hackers because they pull out information like technical stacks, what's your structure company inside looks like, what does your infrastructure look like. There's a lot of key information in job postings, so just want to highlight that again if you haven't heard that before. So that being said, it's definitely going to be part of my pipeline here. I'm going to use LinkedIn OSINT and maybe other social media sources, going to map an org chart, identify key staff, tenure patterns, recent hires, that sort of thing. And then I'm going to use public facing internet scanners to pull data. So, Shodan or Census, and then get back detailed information about open ports, potential vulnerabilities, and that sort of thing. I do actually have a quick demo, so I'm going to show that briefly. There is a tool in the wild that is called, it used to be called Pentest GPT, but now it's called hackerai.co. It's a free tool. It is something that I use all the time, both from a learning and a capture the flag perspective, but also a training perspective. Has lots of cool features, but basically think of it as an LLM that's specifically tailored for hacking purposes. And what I did is I actually took a real Shodan output that I sanitized, obviously, because I don't want it tied to a specific person or organization. And then I fed that into this LLM with the following prompt. Based on this external scan and passive recon data, identify 3 highest priority attack paths. For each one, explain what the vulnerability is, how an attacker would exploit it, and how it could chain into further access. Assume the goal is an initial foothold leading to internal network access or credential theft. And then I gave it that Shodan output. Um, Literally thought for 57 seconds and then provided exactly what I asked it for. 3 highest priority attack paths, how I would go about attacking those, and then how I would take that access, or if that attack was successful, how I would pivot from there given the goals that I presented to it. Again, this is a free tool that anybody can use, and I do pay for the paid version because I like it a lot, and it's really great from a learning perspective. But even though I'm a good guy, at least so they tell me, there's a lot of bad guys out there too, and they could easily be using this tool or something along these lines. If you think about it, there's really only some terms of service or fine print that says don't hack with this tool or don't do anything you're not supposed to, but that's not going to stop them. Obviously, there's a lot of AI models out there that have strict guardrails when it comes to this. If you're talking about some of the major ones like Claude and Gemini and OpenAI, they generally will do things to prevent you from doing this, but there's a lot of AI models out there that don't have those guardrails. There's also models that are built for this purpose, like this model here. I can switch back to my presentation. GitHub, another really, really common finding source as a pen tester and a red teamer here where I currently am at Sprocket, and from my experience in the past looking for keys, comments, internal information that's not public yet, anything that can be publicly accessible on GitHub. And you'd be surprised. I think like most people these days are aware of keys and public keys, secret keys being exposed in GitHub, and most people are cognizant of that, although it definitely does still happen. But I think one of the things that I've seen that is really interesting in GitHub are comments in code and comments in GitHub itself. They can actually point to things that shouldn't be public knowledge, like, hey, this code snippet is for upcoming super secret project Squirrel, that sort of thing. So GitHub obviously going to be a component of this. And then build a target profile for me, structured output, what are key personnel, tech stack, what are entry points that I can utilize, and everything. So just being able to pull all of that data in the same place and do this on a quick timeline is pretty insane. Another key component is none of this was authenticated. This wasn't like assumed access or somebody phished and got internal access. This was all publicly available information, right? This was all OSINT, public sources, and then the average time per target from a AI perspective is about under 20 minutes, as I had mentioned before when I was doing research and testing. And it runs on about 50 targets simultaneously within that time. So again, just kind of highlighting the scale and that being the big takeaway here. So next thing I'm going to talk about is spear phishing at scale. As I mentioned, spear phishing is not like a new concept, but this is what, kind of the logical extension of what we just talked about, as well as something that's really dangerous, and I'll kind of highlight that. So formula is really simple. Take the profile that you just built using that pipeline from before, name, role, recent company news, tech stack, job postings, org chart, and then feed that in to your AI of choice and tell it to write a phishing email. And then the output that you're looking at is kind of a sample of that, right? Email references an AWS migration because the job posting said something like US East 2 migration in progress. And the AI connected those dots automatically. Now, the scary thing about this from like a phishing perspective is this isn't a template. There's no signature to match this against. Every email is unique. Every email has real infrastructure, real events, and real context. It passes the gut check. Does this feel right? Yes, because it's contextually accurate. The infrastructure is already there too. You can have AI help you set up a SendGrid API key. The SendGrid API key from GitHub. That's a live sending domain. You can have it help you set up a typo squat domain that's registered that morning for just a couple dollars. You can make this look very legitimate. There's obviously still signs, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But you can still make all of this look very legitimate. So as mentioned, why does it get missed? There's no templates. It doesn't match signature-based filter patterns. Every email is unique. It does pass the gut check because the context is real. Looks legitimate because it's coming from a live domain or a fresh typo squat. So what does actually catch it? Behavioral signals, right? We've talked about heuristics and security for many, many, many years now, but not content. And so I think in a broader conversation, right, we should be moving away from signature-based detection in the first place. Like, as I'm going to talk about next, when we talk about exploits, talk about how easy it is to avoid signature-based detection these days. But now this is also true in email security, as well as any kind of personalized security. So again, behavioral, why is a user clicking an external link at 11 p.m. from a sender they've never emailed before? That's your signal, not the email itself. If your email security is currently content-based, this kind of tactic bypasses it by design. Last thing I'm going to talk about is exploit scaffolding and payload adaptation. So really the window is shrinking for taking a new vulnerability or celebrity malware, as I call it, and building a real exploit. Used to take, as I said, literally sometimes months, not always, sometimes there'd be simple ones, but sometimes months, maybe even years, to just be able to develop an exploit and a proof of concept for that exploit. But now, could be hours. So really compressing days down to hours. And then adapting that to a specific target can be done within minutes. And then seconds, literal seconds to rewrite payloads that still work, that evade signature-based detection rules. So what does this mean again? It means signature-based detection degrades faster than you can update signatures. That's kind of my I love that phrase, and that's kind of my takeaway from this. Another thing I want to highlight, CVSS scoring is not sufficient prioritization. I would say that this has been also true for a long time, and that's one of the benefits of offensive security, like what we provide here at Sprocket Security, is being able to understand real exploitability and real risk and impact to your environment. But this is just another case of that, like some theoretical score based on how bad a vulnerability potentially might be is not good enough. So what I like to replace this with, and I'm going to talk about, is using LLMs to hack your own environment and understand like what is LLM accessible exploitability and how easy is it to weaponize with AI. And then the OpenAI incident last month makes this pretty concrete. Model autonomously discovered 0 days and chained them across environments. Again, no human directed each step. I did talk about Pentest GPT, which is now Hacker AI for side projects and capture the fags. Legitimately useful. Attackers know about it too. Just want to hit on that again. And I would recommend you all check it out as security individuals. So what do you do with all this information? So I'm going to break this down into kind of 3 roles and 3 teams. So the security team, you should assume that attackers are already using AI on your external footprint. So what should you do? You should use AI on your external footprint. Like follow the same processes that attackers would do. See what information you can glean from your AI model of choice. See if you can build and craft those phishing emails. Run it yourself. In fact, I would suggest setting up either an agent or a recurring task to run it on a regular basis to catch things that have changed that are different, and see if attackers are able to glean this information using the same processes. Again, we talk about this a lot at Sprocket Security, continuous-based testing. So we're always looking for new assets. If you have new assets that are unknown, especially internally, they're untested, but they're accessible to the threat actors, right? So that is something you want to keep on top of. More on the defensive side or in the SOC, you want to tune your detection for behavioral anomalies and not content patterns. Again, maybe not a new concept, but this is just accelerating that more. Prioritize credential use monitoring. So something that I always say is that, the AI hasn't really changed the attack chain. Like, that's still being followed. And as part of that, you're still able to catch these unusual behaviors. It's just happening a lot quicker. And one of the ways of doing that is credential use monitoring. And then look at your patch backlog through the lens of what's actually exploitable, right? So not the score that your vulnerability management program provides, but what is actually exploitable, what presents the most risk and impact to your organization. And again, run these tools, run your own LLM attacks against your organization with that context or with that thought. From a leadership perspective, annual pen tests already a gap before LLMs or before AI in general, and now it just becomes more widely available and faster. So the gap is just being compressed. Or I guess I should say the gap is widening, the time scale is being compressed. The question is not, are we tested? It's how fast could an attacker move against us today, right now? And continuous testing or continuous assurance, no longer optional. It's totally table stakes. So, big takeaway, right? Attackers have access to the same AI models you do. The question is whether or not your security is moving as fast as they are. So that's the talk. A few things worth repeating before I step away here. So OpenAI incident isn't an edge case. It's a demonstration of capability that's in the hands of anyone with access to this technology. 3 specific techniques I walked through: OSINT automation, phishing at scale, and exploit scaffolding. Not theoretical, they're actually being used. The demo that I showed you in Pentest GPT or Hacker AI is representative of what's available to anyone running a semi-serious operation today. And then the defensive response, not complicated. Again, this has all been abstracted away and kind of this new layer of abstraction AI. But underlying that, like the same attack chain is being followed. It's just being compressed. So run the OSINT and run these tools on yourself. Tune detection for behavior, not content, and rethink the cadence of your testing program. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Sprocket Security. We'll have some contact information for you. As a brief overview of Sprocket Security, we do provide continuous pen testing in a hybrid approach. We use real human testers as well as AI and programmatic automation for flexibility and scaling. We look at your environment across the entire year. We do have AI tools in place now, like Apex, which is our unauthenticated web application tester. And humans are still validating and looking at those results and supervising the AI usage. So making sure that we have the right guardrails in place and we're not breaking anything unintentionally or trying to repeat what happened with OpenAI. So it was a pleasure to talk to you today. Thanks for watching. Again, my name is Topher Lyons, and stay paranoid.